Welcome back to Saxon Math. This is Lesson 78, Capacity. To measure quantities of liquid in the U.S. customary system, we use the units gallons, quarts, pints, cups, and ounces. In the metric system, we use liters and milliliters. The relationships between units within each system are shown in the following table. 1 gallon equals 4 quarts, 1 quart equals 2 pints, 1 pint equals 2 cups, 1 cup equals 8 ounces, and in the metric system, 1 liter equals 1,000 milliliters. Common container sizes based on the U.S. customary system are illustrated below. These containers are named by their capacity, that is, by the amount of liquid they can contain. Notice that each container size has half the capacity of the next largest container. Also notice that a quart is 1/4 of a gallon. So if you have 1 gallon, you have a half gallon, and 1 quart, 1 pint, 1 cup. Those are the U.S. customary systems. Food and beverage containers often have both U.S. customary and metric capacities printed on the containers. Using the information found on 2-liter seltzer bottles and half-gallon milk cartons, we find that 1 liter is a little more than 1 quart. So the capacity of a 2-liter bottle is a little more than the capacity of a half-gallon container. So if you were to look at a 2-liter bottle, like a pop, or if you have a milk half-gallon container, you know that a 2-liter bottle will be just slightly more. It actually ends up being 67 ounces, just a little bit over 67 ounces, and a milk half-gallon container would be 64 ounces, right on the money. Note that we use ounces to measure capacity and weight. However, these are two different units of measurement. When we measure capacity, we often refer to fluid ounces. You can also use the big G, so I'll get into that here on this page. The big G would look something like this. In the big G, you've got the larger G standing for the gallon. So within 1 gallon, you have 4 quarts. So there are 4 Q's representing each of those quarts. Within each of the quarts, there are 2 P's for pints. And then within each of the P's that represent pints, you see that there are 2 C's. And the 2 C's mean that there are 2 cups for every pint. There are 2 pints for every quart. There are 4 quarts for every gallon, or 2 quarts for every half gallon. So you can use the big G to really determine how much of each will fit into the gallon itself. So an equivalent amount of 1 gallon as far as cups is concerned, you can see that there would be 4 here, 4 more, 4 more, 4 more. So you can see that in total you have 16 cups, which equals 1 gallon. A half a gallon would be the same as 8 cups. 1 quart would be 4 cups. 1 pint would be 2 cups. So you can answer a lot of questions using the big G. All right, so looking at example 1, a half gallon of milk is how many pints of milk? So if you know that you have a half gallon, which has 4 quarts in it, remember that each quart has 2 pints inside of it. So if we're looking at a half gallon, we're looking at 2 quarts because 2 is half of 4. So 2 pints equals a quart, and 2 quarts equals a half gallon. So a half gallon of milk is going to include 4 pints. And if you go back to the big G, you can see that in there. 2 pints inside of each quart. And if you have, 4 pints inside of each quart. And if you have a half gallon, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 pints. You can see each of those within the big G there. In example 2, which has a greater capacity, 12 ounces of a can or a 1 pint container? So if you look at 1 pint, 1 pint has 2 cups in it, and each cup has 8 ounces. So that'd be the same as 2 times 8, which equals 16 ounces. So 1 pint is the same as 16 ounces. And if you've got this 12 ounces and you compare it to 16 ounces, you know that 12 ounces is going to be smaller or less than 16 ounces. So 1 pint container is going to be having more capacity than a 12-ounce can. All right, let's look at some questions here. So letter A, what fraction of a gallon is a quart? Go ahead and answer that. You can go back to the big G, or you can use this US customary system to recognize what fraction of a gallon, that is, how many quarts will fit inside of a gallon, and that will determine the fraction. You should have answered 1/4, for there are four quarts inside of a gallon. If you look at the big G, you can see that there are 4 that fit inside of each of those. You could also use the US customary system list here, and you see that 4 quarts equals 1 gallon. So if you know that there's 4 quarts in a gallon, you know that 1 quart is 1 out of 4 total inside of that gallon. Letter B, a 2-liter bottle has a capacity of how many milliliters? So if you know that 1 liter equals 1,000 milliliters, you now know how many 2 liters is. And you should have answered 2,000 milliliters. For letter C, a half gallon of orange juice will fill how many 8-ounce cups? So if you know that you've got a half gallon, you've got how many cups inside of a half gallon? So if you have a half gallon, that's going to be 2 quarts. And 1 quart, each quart has 2 pints in it. And each of those pints has 2 cups. And each of those cups has 8 ounces. You should have answered 8 cups. And if you go back and look at the big G, you can see that there are 8 cups inside of a half gallon, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you're looking at the big G. And then letter D, the entire contents of a full 2-liter bottle are poured into an empty half-gallon carton. Will the half-gallon container overflow? Why or why not? And you'd have to go back and look. You can see that, yes, it will overflow, because the 2 liters is slightly more than 1/2 gallon. It has 67 ounces, or just a little bit over 67 ounces, while a half gallon equals 64 fluid ounces. So because of that, if you were to pour a 2-liter bottle of pop into an empty half gallon carton, it will overflow, because it has at least 3 more ounces than that half gallon. All right. Excellent work. If you missed anything, make sure you rewind and review. And then when you do your lesson 78, your written practice, do 1 through 30, so that you get all the concepts and you practice everything each day. All right. Have a great night.